Gareth Edwards is out at OR Tambo International Airport. Gareth, we've been speaking intermittently since 6 this morning. It's now 8:39. I suppose the number of people who are gathering there has increased somewhat since we last spoke?
Yeah, absolutely. Morning, everyone. Welcome back to what is becoming a very, very loud OR Tambo Terminal A arrivals here at the airport. I'm afraid of all the hard work the Springboks have done, we cannot give them some good weather to fly back into. But if you've just joined us, good morning. Let me give you an update on the flight at the moment. We're expecting the Springboks to touch down at around 22 minutes after 10, so less than 2 hours to go now. It'll take a little while for them to come through customs. The expectation is they should come through those doors on the ground level behind me just before 11 o'clock. It's the Springboks, it's the world champions. You would expect that customs will help them get through as quickly as possible. And if it's anything like 2019, it is going to get very, very loud in here. I also expect to see Siya Kolisi coming through those doors with the World Cup in his hands with the entire squad as well. So that's coming up at around 11:15 this morning. The plane touching down, I see here, 22 minutes after 10 this morning. What I want to do as well is begin to unpack the importance, not just of winning the Rugby World Cup, but what it means for the sport here in South Africa. If you were with Vata and Gobeni and I earlier, our eNCA head of sport, we were just beginning to talk about the importance of East London, the importance of the Eastern Cape when it comes to rugby, and especially black rugby in our country. I'd like to bring into the conversation now, if I can, Mark Fredericks. He's a lecturer assistant in journalism at Walter Sisulu University. Mark, good morning. I certainly hope you can hear me. Before we begin all that, yes, you're a lecturer in journalism, but I'm sure obviously you're a Springbok fan as well. Just give me your thoughts from that final on Saturday night. Morning, Mark.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Yes, firstly, congratulations to the Springboks on a fantastic match. It was quite a titanic battle that went down to the wire. But sadly, no, I'm not a Springbok fan. Not by any measure of the word. But that said, I mean, both teams contributed to a fantastic final. It's what was expected of a Rugby World Cup final. I hope you can hear me.
I want to talk about this. I can hear you. I can, yeah. I want to talk to you especially about the relationship between South Africa and East London as well, because there's so much talk about these areas of South Africa where we start seeing these great rugby players coming out. But let's just start there, the relationship between South African rugby and East London. For those who don't understand that connection, help us understand.
Well, unfortunately, I'm originally from Kimberley. I'm not that well versed on the history of rugby in East London. But having said that, the sports movement, the anti-apartheid sports movement, was actually born in East London in 1958 at the Milner Hotel down the road here, close to where the North End soccer field is, where sadly very little sport is played today. What you have is, because of our neo-apartheid state, we have a situation where emphasis is placed on skin color. You know, we are celebrating blackness, but I'm not sure in which manner this blackness is being celebrated in terms of rugby, because East London is a city, or Buffalo City is a city with a population of approximately 1 million people. But there are very few facilities here for sport generally, and rugby specifically, except in your finer areas, you know, your Model C and private school areas. So the relationship with rugby, and specifically with South African rugby, is a relationship of convenience. It's very valuable for South African rugby to hold up a black skin to show that they are progressive, and look what our captain has done for us. But it's not really a happy relationship. I mean, just just on that, this is the city where one of the cities that has been selected where the Springboks will be traveling through. And just in this morning's newspaper, the headline reads that the security is being stepped up for the city fathers because of death threats, and already the city manager has been shot and killed. I'm not sure why we want to hone in on rugby and its relationship with the area when the area itself is decrepit and decaying.
And I suppose what's good to do is, it is a good story when you win a World Cup like this, but for those living here in South Africa, forgive me, it's very loud, Mark, I hope you can hear me. I've got Mendoza, Kalakasa behind me. It does bring to the fore, there are still many, many issues that we're dealing with from an infrastructure perspective and a sports infrastructure perspective, because what you have here is a standout Springbok squad. But you hear the stories of what some of those black players have had to go through over the years. Sia has been very vocal on this. He's gone back to his hometown time and time again trying to make a difference. And I think you're quite right. We mustn't forget that while we celebrate this and the stars at the top of their game, many of them have had to come from areas, exactly what you're alluding to, that are not set up for rugby. The attention isn't there and government isn't doing enough. Am I giving it a fair assessment based on what you're saying?
Yes, you're giving it a fair assessment. That is absolutely correct. But also further than that, it is a pity that Sia Kolisi has to go back to an area that is in dire need, because there are thousands of such cities or townships across this country. Sia and Oxenchair and Bongi Mbonambi and all these guys, they are sprinklings of the talent that exists. I mean, there's a rugby club, I'm not sure if it still exists, in Queenstown, in Komani, that was called Shining Stars. And from Kimberley, we traveled there in 1983, when I was still at school, to go and play this club. And we lived in the township with the guys, and it was quite an experience. But now, with the deliberate collapsing of social sport or communal sport in the country, which was engineered by the African National Congress and the apartheid government during, even prior to Mandela's release, they conspired to deliberately collapse the social structures in sport. And they're expecting people to celebrate Springbok excellence now. So, while I think it's fantastic that people can celebrate the celebrities, because we mustn't confuse celebrity with heroes. These guys are not heroes; these are celebrities. Some of the things they may have done could be looked at as being heroic, but with all the resources they received, once they are removed from their areas and the transformation process begins, because they are being transformed. The areas they come from, those areas are not being transformed. It's the actual individuals who are being transformed. So it is a problematic situation.
It is a problem. You're absolutely correct. I want to ask you this in closing. As you say, let's not confuse celebrities with heroes. Do you get a sense, because of what has now happened again for the second World Cup, do you think there's the leverage here for government, municipalities to actually try and make a difference? Or do you get a sense they're all going to celebrate today and then come next week everything goes back to normal and we forget about this? Just in closing briefly.
Yes, I think we'll just go back to normal. We've got to understand that the government hasn't got the means. The government hasn't got the means, they haven't got the will. In 1995, when the Springboks lifted the World Cup for the first time, the rand-dollar exchange rate was 3 Rand 50 to the dollar. It's now almost 20 Rand. So there's been almost a 700% decrease in the value of the rand. So I don't see how a Springbok victory, whether they win the next 3 or 4, is going to change anything in this country when you don't have a political will to do so. I mean, just quickly, when the Springboks travel through East London, they're going to be going down Woolwash Road, and they're going to be making a very interesting left once they get to the bottom of Woolwash Road. So they're going to be avoiding going into Scenery Park, where 26 young people died in a Shebeen tragedy not too long ago, So there's at least 26 young people who are not going to be waving their flags. And those deaths are a direct result of government failures. And Ramaphosa declaring a public holiday in a country that's got 40% unemployment is amazing. It's amazing political pageantry on his part. I mean, he doesn't even recognize the tragedy of Marikana, but he's got time to declare a public holiday for the Springboks. As fantastic as the achievement is, there are other things that we urgently need to look at. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark, and I appreciate your time. It's why I wanted to talk to Mark Fredericks, Lecturer, Assistant Journalism Department at the University of Walter Sisulu, just talking about South Africa, the relationship with rugby, and I imagine then, Tommy, as I come back to you, there is a sense of reality. Take nothing away from this moment behind us when the Springboks come through. We have so little to celebrate in our country. This is one of them. But I agree with what Mark is saying. When you polish away that veneer and you start going down the layers, start going down the levels of the issues here in South Africa, sport is a wonderful conduit. Rugby is an incredible conduit to get to the bottom of those issues. But there are so many that Mark suggests that government needs to be focusing on that they simply aren't. It's a sense of reality as we wait for the Springboks to come through around about 20 minutes after 10 they're going to land. They should come through those doors just before 11 o'clock. A very sobering discussion, certainly food for thought. As I move away from what is a very, very loud OR Tambo, I still hope you can hear me, Tommy. Let me come back to you for now.
Thank you so much, Gareth. That's Gareth Edwards out at the OR Tambo International Airport. A very interesting and thought-provoking conversation he had there with Mark Fredericks. Gareth mentioned that that was a dose of reality in the current situation that we're in. I'd like to add that another reality is the hope that this moment has brought to all South Africans. And I'm taken back to one of the supporters who is at the OR Tambo International Airport in an interview that he had earlier on this morning with Nswako Omkari. He said, "This doesn't change anything, but it started something." It doesn't change the socio-political and economic situation that the country is in, but it certainly has started a wave of hope, a wave of positivity, and from here we can go somewhere other than where we are today.